Explosion detected in the lower lab.
The Station is a 2018 sci-fi mystery adventure game, developed and published by an indie team with the same name. While some might take a short look at the game and dismiss it as a walking sim, the game's premise caught my interest, which made me want to give it a go and make a review of it. So let's get stuck into it.
How many millions of hours have been spent studying space in the pursuit of finding life in the universe? So what would happen if we found it? Not bacteria or an invertebrate, but an entire sentient alien civilization. Questions we've been asking since the beginning of time could finally be answered.
The setting of the game is fairly straightforward. Taking place sometime in the future, humanity has found an alien civilization on a distant planet for the first time. There's a small catch though, as the entire planet is in the middle of a global civil war. Taking a page out of Stellaris' book, humanity sent a high-tech space station named the Aspire to passively watch the primitive civilization. The objective is to research and learn as much as possible before the aliens snuff themselves out. The station has stealth capabilities that hide it from the planet while it does its work. Unfortunately for it and the 3 people working on board, something happened which shut down the stealth system and severed all communications. Your player is a recon specialist who's sent to the Aspire in order to find out what's going on. Is it the aliens, or is it something else? It's up to you to find out. As soon as you board the station, you'll be treated to the pleasant visuals that the game has to offer. The design of the station itself is sleek and high-tech, with automatic doors and sci-fi lighting everywhere. But many of the rooms have a unique appearance, with some containing fine artwork, and others offering a view of the chaos down on the planet. The visual design is definitely a strong point of the game, as I was constantly curious about what kind of room I'd unlock next and what it would look like. The station's art style in general is also fairly pleasing to the eyes. If you're a fan of sci-fi tech, you'll probably get a little kick out of this game. You'll be hands-on with some of the technology as well, from things like power cells to maintenance robots.
With a bit of lubrication, I'm ready for anything.
What you'll be interacting with the most are the crew's message logs. When you first stumble across one, you'll be treated to some neat-looking augmented reality tech. AR seems to be a major technology by this point, as you can find different kinds around the station. They range from simple chat messages, to audio logs, and to your own map and inventory. I immediately got some Dead Space vibes as soon as I saw this. There's even an established reason as to why the info logs are scattered around the station in the first place, as it's done automatically by a piece of tech that the crew were wearing. It's a smart little piece of world building on the developer's part. As you traverse the Aspire, you'll mostly be hearing your footsteps, the background ambience, and the crew logs. Oh, and the occasional explosion. It can get quite immersive as you're wandering around and trying to piece things together. Just be wary of the big automatic doors, as I found myself getting startled by them once or twice because of how damn loud they are. There's not a lot of music throughout the game. It's a quiet experience for the most part, but there's a few moments that have a short piece of music when something important happens. Outside of that, there's a few music stings here and there, which can catch you off guard. When you find the audio logs, you'll hear some pretty decent voice acting for the crew members. There's not a ton of messages left by them, but with the focus on just 3 characters, there's little room for any weak performances. But this is another plus for the game, as the members of the crew sound believable given the situation they're in.
Observing their violent nature, some might think they are driven by a ruthless intensity, but I see their ambitions are too easily satisfied. The universe calls to them, as it does to us, to ascend to the heavens for the limitless richness that awaits among the stars. Instead, they have descended into destruction over petty matters of power and pleasure. We are witnessing the swan song of their civilization as it turns to ash. We do best to avoid them lest they take us with them.
The first set of drones returned with the sediment samples, but 2 were Are you drinking?
No. I'm rescuing what's trapped in this bottle.
Well, are you gonna share or what?
So as you might have guessed from the footage so far, the gameplay is fairly straightforward. You walk around, read old messages, listen to audio logs, and solve puzzles. The puzzles in the game aren't too challenging, but they are enjoyable and satisfying. Some of them are fairly creative too, which adds to the experience. Unfortunately, there's too few of them in the whole game, because the station only lasts for about 2 hours. So if you're here for uncovering a mystery and solving puzzles, you will get that, but it'll be over before you know it. Even with the short length, I feel like there's still enough room to throw in at least a few more puzzles here and there. Although that being said, the short time spent on board the station itself will still be an enjoyable one. The puzzles have a nice variety, and it feels engaging to learn bits and pieces about the crew members. There isn't any real threat on board, but there are a few jump scares. The overarching mystery of what happened, and the general atmosphere, helps to generate a bit of tension, so you'll probably find yourself a little on edge as you explore the empty corridors. The game is fairly well polished, and I didn't see any bugs during my time with it, with the exception of picking up documents. Some of the ones I tried to grab were not happy about it, and one straight up refused to cooperate. Thankfully, it never got any worse than this, and the rest of the game is smooth sailing. So the station is all well and good for the gameplay it promises, but this is very much a one and done game. When you finish it, you'll have seen virtually everything that it has to offer. I honestly can't see much value in doing replays, unless you missed an achievement or two. The only other real incentive that I can think of is just exploring the station and taking in the visuals, which actually comes as a separate game mode. There's not much to say about it though. It's just free roam where you can read and listen to everything around the station again at your own pace. So at the beginning of the game when you first land on the Aspire, it quickly becomes apparent that there's something afoot. Somebody knows you're on board, and the crew logs indicate that the overall situation went from shaky at best to a complete disaster. The 3 crew members of the station are Aiden, the engineer, Mila, the captain, and Silas, the science officer. Aiden is a troubled alcoholic, Mila lives in her father's shadow, and has a troubled history with Silas, who himself isn't quite the perfect specimen. It's not the most terrible working relationship for the crew, as they mostly get along fine, except for Mila and Silas trying to avoid each other. The 3 of them worked their way through the mission schedule without too much trouble, until something happened just 4 days before they were due to finish. There's really not much else I can talk about without spoiling things at this point, so if you don't want to hear any of that, jump to here. So as we explore the station and rummage through the personal belongings of the crew, we end up learning a bit more about them. With Silas, he had to lie to the company in charge of the mission about his history with Mila, as the 2 of them used to be in a relationship. He still very much has feelings for her, but Mila finds out that he lied about her, which causes her to avoid him for the rest of the mission. When it comes to Aiden, his big problem is that his daughter has a serious condition that requires medical care, which he can't afford. So that explains the constant drinking. The crew each have their own flaws and issues, but they're not bad people. Instead, that honor goes to the company executives in charge of the mission, who did some meddling behind the scenes. The situation began deteriorating when they changed the mission objectives to include abduction and dissection of the aliens, which the crew weren't too pleased about. Speaking of the aliens, by the way, we can learn a little bit about them from Silas's research, which serves as some clever foreshadowing for later. So that's the backstory, but what actually caused the station to reveal itself and go radio silent? Well, early on in the game, we can find out that Aiden was offered a lump of dosh by an unknown party if he sabotages the Aspire. Given that he's strapped for cash to care for his daughter, this might appear to be the real cause at first. But we later find out that Mila took a stand against the corporate meddling with the station's mission. When we factor this with Aiden's discovery that the corporation has full control over the station's systems, it doesn't paint a nice picture. It's not explicitly stated which one is the real cause, but out of the 2 possibilities, the corporate fuckery seems more likely. So with the stealth systems offline, the entire planet can see the Aspire in orbit, so the aliens waste no time in sending in the Marines. I use the present tense because this is actually happening while you're still on board. You arrive just before they do, but all the action happens off-screen in the sections that you don't have access to yet. So once they're on board, the aliens try to capture Aiden first. He instead chooses to sacrifice himself and give the aliens a Belter-style execution by spacing them. Silas doesn't fare much better, as he finds himself trapped inside one of the laboratories trying to erase what they've been doing. He triggers an explosion that kills himself along with a member of the boarding party. This leaves Mila as the sole survivor, who you quickly find after learning about Silas's fate. Unfortunately, there's still one last alien on board, and it kills her before you can get to her. There's no time for mourning though, because the self-destruct system suddenly activates, so it's time for you to hightail it to the escape pods. You catch up to the alien right in front of them where we... Oh. Well, anyway, you still need to get off the station. The recon specialist gets away just in time, only to see... No, John, you are the aliens. This is a huge inversion of what I thought was going on. The violent race of the crew we're observing was actually humanity. That civil war is actually World War III. And all those remarks about the species having great potential but choosing to fight themselves instead applies directly to us. It's all a bit ham-fisted and feels kind of preachy once it fully sinks in. I don't know what kind of ending I was expecting, but it wasn't this one. Nevertheless, that's the one we got. So to conclude everything, the mystery and setting is compelling, the puzzles are fun yet limited, and the story goes from alright to, oh, okay. Would I recommend the station? Well, it's a bit difficult to just say yes. It's definitely not a bad game, but it is too short for its asking price, especially considering it's only good for just one playthrough. If you can grab it on sale, then I'd say it's probably worth giving it a shot if you're super curious about it. Otherwise, the ending and overall length will likely just frustrate you. If you want to buy the station, the only place you can get it is on Steam and nowhere else. If you have a VR headset and want to play the game, then you can also buy a separate version that supports it. So that's all I've got for now. Stay tuned for another space game coming next. It'll be a little more exciting than this one, so until then, take it easy.
Oh, some 100